Welcome back, guys, to another roundtable. My name is Adam, Victor, Rusmin.
Hello.
With me once again. Thank you for joining us. And today at this roundtable, we're going to talk about our favorite sectors and industries to invest in. So I think a lot of times when people talk about, places to invest in, they kind of get excited about, the industries that are coming in, like they say EVs or renewables or tech and stuff like that. So I think we want to discuss and share some of our favorite industries that we like to invest in. But before we dive into that, I think we need to define what a sector and industry really is, because these two terms, a lot of people just use them interchangeably, but they're actually different. So let's define what a sector and what an industry really is.
Okay, so you can start off with the easy one, which is consumer staples, right? So under consumer staples, that is a sector by itself, right? And within that sector, they have this thing called the industry group, which they have food and staples retailing. They have your food and beverage and tobacco, your household and personal products. So they have three industry group inside the consumer staple. So let's start off with the food and staple retailing. So your food and staple retailing is like companies like your Walmart, your Costco, your restaurants like your Shake Shack, right? So that is your food and staple retailing. Your drugstore is also inside there. Then your food, beverage, and tobacco is like your food products, like your Pepsi Cola. They have chips inside their business, and right. They also have beverage business inside, and your tobacco business, which is Philip Morris, right. Then your household and personal care is like your P&G. Right, Procter and Gamble, where they have your shaver, your detergent, right. So all these are under your industry group.
All right. So basically, when we say sector industries, it's actually different. The sector is like a high level, kind of the sector of the economy. So like the energy sector. So in this case, you're talking about the consumer staples.
Yes, correct.
And within that, there are actually industry groups and then industries within that.
Yeah.
And that kind of like defines what really industry is.
Yep.
All right. And give me another quick example.
Even for let's say you look at the real estate as an industry, a lot of people often confuse that real estate is just one sector or one industry by itself. But within the real estate itself, I think there are subcategories or sub-industry. There are two main differentiations. One is real estate investment trust, which is REITs, where we invest for income, and the other one is real estate management and development. Okay, so and within the real estate investment trust itself, there are in Singapore, for example, there are main six sub-industry by itself. One is you have industrial REITs, you have hospitality REITs, you have healthcare REITs, and shopping mall REITs like CapitaLand Commercial Trust, and of course nowadays we've got more and more diversified REITs. Okay, like example, merger of CapitaLand Commercial Trust with CapitaLand Mall Trust. Okay, and of course if you look at another industry, which is real estate management, recently we talked about CapitaLand. They actually initially was a development and a real estate management company, but now they are going focus solely on the real estate management company, which is they require lesser asset,
which also known as the REITs manager.
REITs manager.
All right. So I think a lot of times when people say, "Hey, I'm interested in the tech sector," what they actually mean is that it's very hard to be an expert in the entire sector, because there's so many industry groups, so many different industries. You can't know everything. So when we say someone's interested in the tech sector, they actually mean a more particular industry within the sector.
Yes, correct.
So we're going to talk about some of our favorite industries that we actually like to invest in. So once we've defined that, what are the favorite industries that we like to look at? So you guys, what are your favorite industries that you want to invest in?
I think the first one, of course, is always you need to start off with the industry where you have a circle of competence, right? I mean, the industry where you think you're very familiar, or you are a customer of it, or you use the product or services regularly. Okay, so when I first started off, it was actually an F&B industry, but over time I actually moved away from F&B because I realized it's a very competitive industry, and now actually I ended up in the industry where I find it quite attractive, especially if you want to invest for income, and that is actually a REIT, real estate investment trust. Okay, and there are some, even within the sector of the REIT, you need to also focus on the industry where they are more resilient, like healthcare REITs, for example, and then of course now industrial REITs, you have data center, which over the next 10 years and 20 years, you can actually expect that this sector will remain relatively stable. Okay, so REITs is one of the main industry that I really like, and then the second category that I like, or industry that I like, is actually the tech. Okay, so I think tech we have actually talked a lot in our past podcasts and all that. This is a sector where I think it's highly scalable because internet has revolutionized the way we receive information. Most of us actually now we have a smartphone and all that. So if you look at the big companies in the US also, now you have FANG, right? Not N, but M.
Sorry, because Microsoft is in it, right?
Yes, sorry, Netflix. But you got Facebook, Apple, and then you got Amazon, and then Microsoft, and then followed by Google. Okay, so this is the companies that are highly scalable. That's the reason why today they've gotten so big.
Yep.
Yeah. So and you look at the return on investment on equity on asset. These are the companies that can generate tons of double-digit return, and plus they generate a lot of free cash flow.
Actually, so if you look at what Rusmi had just mentioned, right, it's all under the sector of information technology. And the subgroup, right, of it, right, which is the industry group, you have the software and services, which is most of the FANGs are in there. Right. Then inside the information technology, right, there's also technology hardware and equipment, and also semiconductor and equipment, right? So what he mentioned is actually we are very focused on the software and services. Right?
Yeah, because that's the industry that's actually the most scalable in a sense, because you're dealing with internet stuff, software easily replicable and all that.
And you compare with the other two sectors that we mentioned inside the industry group, right? The software and services, like what Rusmi mentioned, is much more asset-like.
In nature, Of course, you can't ignore the hardware, right? Because that essentially empower all the software that is running on top of it. But that's the job of government, right? Just to build the infrastructure. But we want to focus on the industry that gives you the best return. So you're looking for a growth, multi-baggers kind of stocks. This is the industry that you really want to look at.
I think in our previous roundtable, I think the last one, we were talking about scalability and why certain industries are actually more scalable. This is naturally more scalable than other industries. And when we talk about tech, we actually, in this sense, most people when they say, I love tech, it actually means they love software. The software business, right, in a sense.
There are some people who like hardware, like TSMC.
Some people look into semiconductors and all that, but that requires you to actually understand the industry, because it's a bit specialized. Because I think when it comes to software and services, it's something that we as consumers are very familiar with. We use Instagram, Facebook, we use Google, stuff like that. Amazon is something that we shop on. Something that's easy to understand, which goes back to your point about circle of competence, that you want to start investing in something that you naturally understand, you have a background in. Because if you don't, it's kind of like, it's like starting a new subject in school. It takes a lot of time to understand something. So you want to start with something that you're familiar with.
It is important because let's say if you're a Facebook user or investor, right? I mean, the day when you stop using Facebook, then you know that, something's
wrong.
And of course, you may move to Instagram. Then you realize, Facebook also owns Instagram.
Oh yeah, so there's no difference there.
This is what happened to me.
So it's good to know, start with something that you're familiar with. What about you, Victor? Any particular industries that you like yourself?
Personally, I like the healthcare industry. Okay. In general, if you look at the healthcare sector, right, that's the sector by itself, right? But the industry group is split between healthcare equipment and services, and pharmaceutical and biotechnological and life science. So when I talk about healthcare, right, it's actually healthcare equipment and services. So that is the industry group that I always been looking at. I like it is because a lot of the business in this industry group, right, they are usually like a printer and cartridge business, right? So for instance, let's say this company called IDEX Laboratories, right? So this company basically they build the lab testing for all those pets, right? Vet. They provide all these machineries for the vet, right, to do tests for all those pets owners in the US and around the world, right? And of course nowadays we understand that pets owners they really spend a lot, right?
Some pets have better lives than you, man.
Yeah, definitely, right? I mean, I used to have a Jack Russell, right, before he died, right? And
what did you do to him, man?
No, I mean, he died of old age, right?
Super fat Jack Russell.
He lived a good life, man.
Okay.
And we really spend a lot of money in him, right? And at any point of time, right, if he's sick, right, my mom is very worried. Right? And whatever test, right, my mom will just pay, and the tests are not cheap, right? And for IDEX, this company, right, they sell the equipment for the testing equipment, and on top of that, all these vets have to consistently buy the consumable from them, and all this creates a recurring business for IDEX. And by looking in this sector, right, I think it really creates a higher chance of probability that you get it right most of the time when investing in our sector, because most of the business down there are much more recurring, I would say.
I think healthcare is one sector or industry, I'm use both terms right now, but where it's pretty, you can't really negotiate in the sense that if, like you say, your pet is so important that I think your mom is more worried about your Jack Russell than you, right?
Definitely, I think.
So, but it's like, my son's sick, whatever, but oh my God, the dog is not feeling well. And they go to the vet, and and it's something that you don't want to scrimp on.
Correct.
I mean, even if you're sick, even if it's a recession, you have to see the doctor. If you have something that's going on with you, you have to pay to make sure that health is so important. So
I mean, people are worried that during COVID, nobody going to spend the money on all these pets or anything. But eventually, I think IDEX, they actually managed to get record sales and revenue
even during 2020,
during COVID.
during COVID.
That means the pet owner are really crazy. They just go out and get their
so you
pets,
know what it feels like.
testing.
So far we've covered tech as in software services, healthcare, which is the equipment. So when you talk about printer and cartridge, is basically something that you need. That's a recurring business. The business can always sell something that the client always wants. And then there's real estate investment trust, which is basically property in the sense that everyone needs land, property, space to do the work or to live and do stuff like that. So these are industries that you guys like because it's very predictable in a sense, that it's very resilient as well, and especially in the tech. I'm going to use tech and software services now. The tech sector, basically, it's very scalable and there's a lot of growth in that as well. So actually, if you're interested in all these classifications that we're discussing, it's actually based on the MSCI Global Industry Classification Standard, which is the one that S&P 500 uses as well. So I think this is one that's pretty standard across the base. But there are other classifications as well, but I think this is a pretty good one. So go have a look at it yourself. And there are many different sectors and industries. I think there are how many? Over 100 sub-industries as well, right? It goes down to the sub-industries as well.
Yeah, because this is according to the S&P, right? We're looking at a FactSet or Bloomberg. They have their own classification, but the way they classify is actually very, very similar.
Okay. So I think we've shared some of our favorite industries that we like to invest in for those reasons. Are there any industries that you avoid, that you just don't want to touch?
Airlines. I love to fly, but I don't love it as an investor. Right?
Okay.
Because the airline naturally is a capital-intensive business, and it requires billions, hundreds of millions of dollars to buy a plane. And when the COVID hit, and even before the COVID, in the past, I don't really like airline because this industry where it just depreciates. It's not like property where you buy and then you appreciate over time. Right? Airline, you buy a plane, you just depreciate. And they always say that, right, to become a millionaire, you start off with a billionaire, and then you invest in the airline.
So your airline industry is under the industrial sector.
Okay.
Then in the industry group is under transportation. Then finally the sub-industry is actually airline.
So
I see.
I'm not saying that any businesses that are capital intensive in nature is not good as an investment, right? But if you are in the industry where it's commoditized, like airline or even shipping, especially if the industry is also capital intensive, I think it's very difficult to get the good returns.
It's just like
there.
the cards are stacked against you when you invest in that industry. So unless you, I wouldn't know what you
like
invest
we say,
in.
the airline is very competitive. Right? It's okay to be in a very competitive environment, right? As long as your competitor die eventually, right? But for airline industry, your competitor never die.
Because they're usually backed by the government.
Correct.
Because it's something
you look at some of the airline, they died many times but still survive.
It's a playing game. You die and then you
so you can respawn anytime you want.
And also another industry that I used to invest is also shipping, right? And this is an industry where it costs millions, a lot of money to buy a ship, right? And then when they started to get a ship and then they charter out, for example, the rate itself fluctuates and depends a lot on the supply and demand. And it's very difficult to get that right. Even if you got a lot of information about the industry itself, sometimes there are certain moving parts, like the prices of oil could affect the shipping costs, right? And that will affect, even though you may, at the time when we invested in the shipping industry, it was like down like 90%, the index, right? And what could go wrong, right? How can it go lower?
Even lower than that, right? And what happened
so
next?
It got even lower than that.
Even lower. So we invested in the industry, and then subsequently oil prices collapsed, and then it become even cheaper to actually start a shipping business. And those previously the ship owner will be struggling, and because of the oversupply situation. So that industry has been tough for many years, even until today, more than 10 years.
And did you take a long time to kind of just study that industry? Because you're not originally from shipping, right? So it took a lot of time just to understand it. And then at the end of the day, it's just like
you still don't understand
it. Still don't understand
it's just too difficult to invest in those industries.
I think we have to put it very clear out there. I mean, some industry is very good for investment. Some are not. But some business, even though they are not good for investment, but they are essential for the business to keep the economy moving.
For the country especially.
So you just choose the one that is essential for the economy, but also good for investment, right?
Yeah, I remember an episode of Shark Tank where you have the sharks, they want to invest in the business, and they're saying like, look, there's certain businesses that it's fine to be a business owner in. You own the business, so like all these businesses that we talk about, airlines or whatever, it's maybe good to be an owner, you earn profit and all that, but to be an investor is a different thing. So the shark was saying, look, to be an investor, I want growth, I want predictability.
Return,
something that I can see a return on investment. And certain industries, like they say airlines, is just it's just cyclical, price competitive.
Sometimes just national service.
Yeah, and it's just not the best place that you could potentially invest in, where there's so many options out there as well.
And another industry, of course, would be the oil and gas. And this is an industry where EV is catching up, right? I mean, in the future, you don't know how that is going to impact that. And even before the EV, I'm not really into oil and gas. Like I said, there are so many moving parts. The prices of oil will ultimately decide the return of it, and you don't know what oil prices are going to be in the next 3 years. Although it looks promising, but there's always a black swan. Look at COVID, right? So,
but to be fair, COVID affected almost everything.
Yes,
in a sense. Yeah.
And of course, then subsequently mining. Again, mining, usually you produce those commodities like gold, right? And those are the stuff where I think it's very difficult to predict the outcome of the selling price ultimately. Right? There's no differentiation. It's commodity.
So especially if you're not in the industry, it's like probably don't want to go.
Even if you're in the industry, I don't think you should be looking at the industry.
Choose the one that's good for investment.
Okay. So I think we kind of covered why certain industries are our favorite, not because they just happen to be our favorite, but because they're just naturally easier to make money in.
Correct.
As an investor. Because there's more scalability involved. There's a lot more predictability in terms of revenues, and it's easy to understand. It's not just easier to understand as well. So why go do the tough industry when it doesn't really pay you extra, right?
Yeah, it doesn't pay. I mean, you have to pay back actually.
We did pay back.
We did pay back a couple of times actually.
Okay. So I think this is a pretty good wrap up actually. So I think in this roundtable, we just wanted to share the differences between sectors and industries, and a lot of times when people interchangeably use those terms, we're looking at specific industries that we like, and we shared three of our favorite, which is basically tech or software services, REITs, and healthcare, which is in the equipment
and services.
Equipment and services, where it's something that you really can't scrimp on,
Yes.
Right. So again, and then some of the industries that we want to avoid as well. So these are the things that you should consider yourself when you're looking to invest. Maybe there's something that you just don't understand. Don't go into that unless you kind of like you're an expert in the area. But once again, like you were saying, maybe it just doesn't make sense as an investor as well. So I hope this was a really good, wrap up, good, summary of what we discussed so far. So once again, my name is Adam. This is Victor.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today. I hope you really learned something. So if you enjoyed this discussion, please hit the like button. Tell us that we're doing something good, and of course, subscribe to our channel. Many more roundtables coming up as well. Any comments or questions, we're happy to have a discussion with you on the YouTube channel's comments as well. So once again, thank you for being here, and we'll see you around again.